Hi everybody, Jeff Davidoff here, and I was so grateful and proud to be here. I was thinking as I was backstage, if you tried to have this kind of meeting 5 or 6 years ago, where you asked the question, where does technology intersect with doing good, the answer would be, it didn't, and no one would be here. And now we have a whole day where you see it happening in the US, and you see it happening on the continent, and you see it happening all over the world, and I'm really just pleased to be able to show the work we're doing is one small piece of that. For those of you who are not familiar with ONE, I'd like to give people to ONE 101. We're a global anti-poverty advocacy organization. Each word makes sense, but when you put them together, people don't always understand what that means. What we mean by advocacy is we're not asking for your money, we're asking for your voice. And we have kind of an inside-outside advocacy model. We've got people in capitals around the world, in Washington, in London, in Paris, Brussels, Berlin, Johannesburg, all talking to inside influential people, from presidents and prime ministers to parliamentarians and regular congressmen, every day about the right kind of programs and policies that can affect this number on the bottom. That right now, as we sit here in our luxury, there's 1 billion people who are living on less than $1.25 a day. But that inside advocacy, or it's okay to say the word lobbying, is only half of our model. The other half is we have 3.5 million ONE members around the world, regular people like you and I, who take action, and when combined with that inside, we give those politicians the confidence and credibility to do the right thing. And action's the key word for us. I say only half jokingly that I care less and less what people think and more what people do. We are about action, and we're about the intersection. This particular program is about the intersection of technology and action and giving a voice to everyday African citizens on the ground. You know, this is sort of the conference circuit. I was at TED 2.5 weeks ago. I must say I'm looking forward to a day where I'm no longer wearing a name tag. And we unveiled in a speech that Bono made there that'll be out the end of this week some incredible statistics about the progress being made in the fight against extreme poverty that I suspect no one here knows, even in this inside community. That from 1990 to 2010, the percentage of people in the world living on less than $1.25 a day has dropped from 43% to 21%. Not only is it shocking that it was 43% in 1990, but that it's been more than cut in half is unbelievable progress. And maybe even more unbelievable than that, there's a chance if you follow these trend lines out, that as early as 2028, we could get to virtual zero, less than 5% of the world living in extreme poverty. This is an incredible opportunity. It's also an incredible challenge because nobody knows, and we absolutely need to have more voices in the fight to finish the job than we did to get it halfway done. Now, how has this happened? It hasn't been a sort of force of nature that extreme poverty has been more than halved. It's been a force of will. It's been a force of will from the world, and a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that the Millennium Development Goals, that you may or may not know by name, were rolled out in 2000 and had the reduction of extreme poverty as a specific goal. And they have been an incredible catalyst for good. Say what you will about their imperfections, but they have been an incredible catalyst for good. And the good news is as how well they've worked. The challenge is they're going to run out. They expire in 2015. So all the geniuses who sit in closed rooms, who wrote the first set of goals, are getting together to write the second set of goals. And yes, there was a lot of good, but what's missing? Our strong point of view, and a lot of other people share this, it's what's missing has been the voice of the poor. If you really want to help the poorest people on the planet, why don't you ask them what they want? Imagine that. So the question, which I think is a pretty common sense thing, I think it just comes down to how you do it. And that's the program I wanted to talk about today. We call it You Choose. And You Choose is a pilot program that's running right now in South Africa, Zambia, and Malawi. And it's a radio outreach, SMS interaction, to ask everyday citizens, with an emphasis on making sure we're reaching out to marginalized citizens as well, a very simple question that is a proxy for what they would like to see in the next round of Millennium Development Goals. I think we ask the question sort of like this: what should your government do to help your family and your friends the most for the next 15 or 20 years? Now, there's a translation process that needs to go from that broad, open-ended question to specific feedback. But this has been the way that we've done this outreach. And because we are both inside and outside, imagine that this outreach to everyday citizens is the capturing of outside voices. But what makes it powerful and what makes it impactful is we're going to present those voices to a high-level panel that is actually drafting these goals. I will say, Not to pick on the UN, the name of the high-level panel is the high-level panel. And we're bringing these voices directly to them. There's been a lot of talk today about how people get involved and how people take action and how you create change. It is our very strong belief at One that you have to capture the voices of regular people, but you have to have the contacts within the system to bring them to bear to actually make that change happen. So how has this thing been working? The outreach in these 3 countries is a combination of things. Radio, and I will say that when we first started this was almost entirely a radio-based program. But what we found about a week in was radio alone wasn't doing it. So the combination of tactics here is sort of a combination of old school and new school. So radio, yes, we're also making tens of thousands of these pamphlets that we're handing out through partner organizations directly to the people on the ground. We also have a pretty aggressive handing out leaflets to people waiting in long taxi lines program, which is working very well. There's also a bunch of, SMS is an interesting sort of system right now, and there are a bunch of intermediaries that help you reach people. Brandtone is a business based in South Africa, and they essentially have a list of SMSs, very much like you'd be used to tapping into an email list. Very effective outreach, and we're getting big numbers from them. Mixit is a sort of, I think of it kind of as a 2G phone-based Facebook. It's a community based on 2G phones that has a very rich following in the high single-digit millions, and we're getting great response from that. While there is a Facebook element to it, and while there is a web element to it, I do want to be clear that the heart of this program is 2G. I'm a tech guy. I embrace my inner nerd, and I love all the new and shiny things. But the truth is, the technology that unites the world today, and the technology that's going to reach out to everyday citizens, and particularly marginalized citizens on the African continent, is a 2G phone. So I think the decision we're making here is embrace what works, and what works is 2G. And the numbers, we think, are pretty good to date. You know, we've got, as I checked as of this morning, we're at about 150,000 responses. And we started to categorize these. As I said, we asked an open question. The open question is, what can the government do for you to help you and your family the most over the next 20 years? You get a range of crazy responses. You code them. And I just want to share some of the top ones we got. The first one is better jobs. People want jobs, good education, and a government that doesn't rip you off. I love these answers for a couple of reasons. The first thing I love about them is they're real and honest, and they're from the people who ultimately are going to be their own solution to getting themselves out of extreme poverty. The other thing I like about them the most is if you went and talked to people in America and asked the question, what can the government do for you to help you and your family the most? They would give you answers like this. And one of the things we find in campaigning in the West to try and campaign on the benefit, for the benefit of people in the South, is anytime you can show how much we are alike is a powerful thing. When you think of people around the world as them or far away or not connected to you, it's easy to turn your head. Anything that shows how much we are, how much we have in common and how much we are alike is a very powerful tool. So these are the responses that we're putting together right now. These are the responses that we're bringing to the high-level panel that is meeting in Bali the end of this month. And that is the beginning of the process, not the end of this process. It will be an 18-month process for the UN and the powers that be to write these development goals. But one, together with other great organizations on the ground, are going to do our part to make sure that the voices of the people who are to be helped are included in that process. And just as time's running out, a couple of lessons learned here. You know, it may sound obvious, but people want to be heard. It was a little bit of a question mark when we went into this, which is, hey, you know, we want to give people a chance to speak up. But in countries where there's not a strong history of civic society, the question was, would they want to? Not a question. They absolutely want to. We learned some tactical things. Radio is great as awareness, but radio was not driving direct response numbers. Radio was not driving high numbers of people responding to SMS. So what it took was a really coordinated attack, like a lot of great marketing programs. Radio on top for branding and awareness, leaflets on the bottom, and in between, working with partners like Brandtone or Mixit to fill in the blanks. And the last thing is just a little plea about SMS cost. A crazy fact that people may or may not know is that the cost of an SMS on the African continent is 5, 10, 15 times what it is here in America or in Europe. And that's a bad thing in a big way, because that's the tool that's connecting everyday people. So I think we've cracked part of the code, which is we know the right technology to have a dialogue with people with. That's SMS. We're finding very good ways to cost-effectively reach out to them and hear their voices. That's working. We know that the responses we get from them are valid and make sense and are things like, I want a job and I want a non-corrupt government. That makes sense. But the current structure of SMS tech and the cost dynamic of that does not make sense. So we're working aggressively with people who are working around the traditional mobile networks to create pipelines for people to have a dialogue with each other and with us and with their governments that isn't ripping them off along the way. So anybody here who's interested in having a conversation about driving down SMS costs, I'm your guy. So thanks.
Thank you.